Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. So today is a special day. It's the final class in this 7.5 month course on Buddhism, View and Path. And we're very, very delighted and privileged to have with us um, one of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche's earliest and very closest students, whom he appointed as Dorje Lopon. Lodro Dorje has been practicing and studying the Dharma for 55 years. In 1976, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche appointed him as head of the Office of Three Yanas to facilitate all his students' practice and study of the Shravakayana, Mahayana, and Vajrayana paths. Lodro was also a founding member of the Nalanda Translation Committee, where he worked very closely and very directly with Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche on both Buddhist and Shambhala texts. And in 1985, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche designated him as Dorje Lopan with specific empowerment to give Vajrayana and Nundro transmissions. So this is why it's a wonderful privilege to have the Dorje Lopan, Lodro Dorje, with us today, especially to introduce the Vajrayana path to us all. Over to you, Lodro. Thank you for being with us.
Uh, Thank you, Tashi, for your kind words, and welcome everyone. I'd like to offer a kind of bow of respect to all of the organizers and to all of the distinguished, my colleague Dharma teachers who have participated in this 7.5 month process, and to the dedication of all of you listening to this who for 7.5 months have been following this exposition of the Dharma. It's wonderful. It's our own commitment, your commitment, and this is an extremely auspicious situation that has been created, and I'd just like to express my appreciation for that. So as usual, we begin with 5 minutes of sitting meditation practice, and maybe Caroline, you could ring a gong at the end.
Okay.
So begin with, let's just, as usual, take a good sitting posture. So you are upright but comfortable, and just feel the sensations of being grounded in your body. And take a few easy in breaths and out breaths, if you like, just to expel stale prana in the respiratory body and in the subtle body. And that's initially just focus our awareness on the sensation of the out breath coming out through the nostrils, dissolving into the room, opening and dissolving into the external space. However you like to practice this, however you're comfortable doing it. Initial experience of the non-conceptual sensation of breath, going out, dissolving, opening. along with dissolving and opening. At some point, you could let your mind just rest wide open in unconditioned awareness without any effort to keep track. Just let go into openness. Use the breath as a way of just opening, expanding, and letting go into open mind without any construction or manipulation. I think we are done.
We have 1 minute left.
1 minute left. Oh, okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining. In this session, we have about an hour for talk and discussion about possibility of entering Vajrayana level of training. And Tashi also requested me to give refuge vows for those of you who haven't received it, and 67 of you asked for refuge names. So we'll have those sent out to you afterwards. And also, he asked the Bodhisattva vow. And Chris J, I think, already presented the Bodhisattva vow in the second class of the Mahayana training. But for those of you who maybe didn't take the vow at that time or would like to refresh it, we'll do the Bodhisattva vow too. So we have a lot to do in 2 hours. In talking about, Shashi requested me to talk about the possibility of entering a Vajrayana level of training and commitment. In part, he asked Dzongtse Khyentse Rinpoche about people doing the Datuns in Beer and elsewhere, after the Datun, what might they do? And Dzogchen Khyentse said, well, they might consider doing Nundro. That's why we're going to talk about this. So the first thing I want to reflect on is the notion of spiritual lineage. That is the lineage of person to person mind transmission of how teachings have passed down from the time of Shakyamuni Buddha uh, via the transmission of a meditation practice, by the oral transmission that's carried in the sutras, in the texts, by the various styles of discipline and so on down to the present. So the Buddha originally taught and experienced his realization according to ordinary histories in about 500 years before the Christian era. And it was passed down as an oral tradition and practice through any schools for years, for 1500 years in India, and spread to Southeast Asia, Java and so forth, and spread to Tibet beginning in the 750s, 780s through Vimalamitra and Padmasambhava Guru Rinpoche. So in India, it was further propagated by the great masters like Asanga, Vasubandhu, Maitreya, Nagarjuna, and all of the Indian masters, including Ashisha, who also transmitted the teachings into Tibet. And first spreading in Tibet was through Guru Rinpoche and Vimalamitra, who transmitted the fruition tantra of Mahayoga and the very profound Dzogchen Ati Yoga. And also there was a monastic transmission through the Indian Bodhisattva abbot Shantarakshita, who introduced monastic training into Tibet under the reign of King Trisong Detsen. And later spreading happened with the time of Marpa the translator and Virupa, who was a founder of the Sakya tradition. So at that time, the Kagyu tradition, the Sakya, and the Gelug traditions gradually arose. And from that time, about 1,000 to 1,050, through 40, 50, 60 generations of masters and practitioners, the teaching of the three yanas of the Hinayana foundational teachings, the Mahayana bodhicitta and emptiness teachings, and the Vajrayana training teachings have been passed down to the present time. So the reason I'm talking about this is, why is it possible to have these meetings and these discussions? Why can we talk about the Dharma not as a historical artifact? I'm talking too fast. We're not talking about the Dharma as a historical artifact. We're not talking about it as scholastic history. We're talking about it as a living practice experience that still comes down to us in the present, person to person, practitioner to practitioner. And that's because of the continuity of lineage tradition, lineage realization, which is handed down to the present. So that is why it's possible for us to practice the complete path of the foundational training, why we can practice the Mahayana training of bodhicitta, why we can still transmit to each other the bodhisattva inspiration, and why also the Vajrayana training is accessible to us if we want to get into it. There are still living masters of the tradition who embody this training and this realization. So the next question is, what is the Vajrayana or the Tantric tradition? And is it something you would want to get into, or is it something you don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole? So we come from, I think, many different sanghas in different countries. So there are many ways you may have connected with the Dharma. Some of us grew up in Buddhist culture. If maybe we lived in Tibet or China. And however you met some kind of Dharma center, some kind of Dharma teacher, you may have met someone very contemporary and conversational, or you may have walked into a very traditional Tibetan temple with all kinds of frescoes and people chanting in strange languages and all kinds of interesting peaceful and wrathful iconography deities on the walls. Or maybe you read about Tantra in an art book or you saw a movie. So uh, there's a lot of maybe uncertainty or confusion about uh, Tantra and what it entails, and whether this is a valid spiritual tradition or a corruption of the original traditions, or just an excuse for people to go freestyle and drink more and make love more and like that. But the authentic Tantra is based on the very foundational training of the Hinayana that we have been doing and the bodhicitta mind that we have been practicing. It's based on those kinds of foundations, and it has its own very definite uh, disciplines and demands. And so, on the one hand, the Tantra might be exciting or very colorful, or you might think you should get into Vajrayana just because of your friends that did it. But Vajrayana is something very deep. It's connected with the uh, each yana that we practice, study. Like the Hinayana teaching says, okay, the ego you have is not as substantial as you think, and there is a reason that you are continually agitated and suffer because there's underneath everything that happens in our life, there's some fundamental anxiety, a fundamental uncertainty because of basic bewilderment. On the other hand, there is some kind of underlying Buddha nature, which is a powerful thing, which we talk about as the bodhicitta in the Mahayana, but there's a kind of embryonic prajna that says, well, in this life, isn't there something more? Isn't there a deeper meaning? Or why is it that in spite of being successful in my life or not successful in my life, there's still a sense of unfulfillment or there's still an existential question? So this is the embryonic prajna. And the Hinayana says, oh, you should acknowledge this uncertainty. And because of that, you need to look at the origin of this uncertainty, which is that there's a bewilderment, there's an underlying, very powerful basic goodness, the very powerful prajna of our mind, at the same time is unfindable, intangible, um, somehow mysterious, ungraspable. So there is this ungraspable longing and yearning, along with a lot of confusion overlaying it. So in the Hinayana tradition, we begin to step into the Dharma through understanding changeability and impermanence and so on, and understanding that this uh, intangible suffering exists or wisdom exists. In the Mahayana tradition, we expand that with the bodhicitta. And in the Vajrayana tradition, basically, we're just taking the Hinayana awareness deeper and the Mahayana awareness more expansive, and we're coming into direct, direct, more deep unfoldment of what we call the Buddha nature, which comes out of the ground wisdom, ground Mahamudra, ground great perfection, ground Dzogchen, ground Alaya consciousness before the samsaric mind ever happened. So that's the significance of the Vajrayana training and why you might want to consider it. Along with that, though, especially in the early days, Trungpa Rinpoche gave a lot of warnings. So some of you may naturally fall into the Vajrayana just because that's part of your culture or that's the temple or sangha you connected with. But the remarks I'm making right now derive from how the Vidyadhara prepared the ground for Tantra in the Western North America and Europe in the 1970s and 1980s when there were a lot of different spiritual traditions and seemingly interesting options. So he gave at that time a lot of warnings. He said, if you're going to enter into Tantra, you cannot do it based on fascination. You really have to understand what you are doing. And you need a grounding in the Hinayana training and the Mahayana training. And if you get into Tantra frivolously or as some kind of a hobby, you will just find that your confusion increases. So don't do that. Be very clear about what the foundations are. And you need to find an authentic teacher, an authentic Sangha in which you have deep confidence, because the Hinayana commitment is one thing, the sitting practice is very reliable, trustworthy, stable. The Mahayana training is very profound, very trustworthy, very stable. And the Vajrayana training is also very profound, but it is a deeper commitment. And having made this commitment, it's not something we can take back, because it is a commitment to the basic nature of it in us, which exists very powerfully. So it's important to emphasize again, and the Buddha Dharma is not a theistic tradition. We are not making a commitment to God or the gods, because Vajrayana would say, well, the gods or the gods are not so powerful or important, because what's at issue is the experiencer of any such energies, if there are such things. And the experiencer is entirely questionable, because this awareness we have is very powerfully present. But this powerfully present awareness that we have is also in some ways unfindable and ungraspable. At the same time, that unfindable, ungraspable awareness is very powerful. But that's what we commit ourselves to in undertaking the Vajrayana training. And we do that through initially through connecting with the lineage people in the lineage transmission. So in the beginning, the Vidyadhara gave a lot of warnings about Tantra. He said, maybe you don't want to take this on. If you do, you have to understand it's a deep and serious commitment. Do it properly. So a few years later, he said, well, I gave a lot of warnings at first, but now basic message to the students should be, you can do this. We can do this. This is something that we can do. This is workable. So a very key point in the Vajrayana training is what we call devotion. In the Hinayana practice, we developed trust in the elder and trust in the advice of the Dharma. It made sense. The meditation practice made sense. It brought some insight. And similarly, in the Mahayana tradition, we developed some kind of trustworthiness with our Sangha and with our life process. But here in the Vajrayana, we're aspiring to go deeper, and the prajna we experienced, and prajna and well-being we experienced in the Hinayana, and the bodhicitta that we experienced in the Vajrayana, we're making a further commitment to that. And in order to make a commitment to that, we have the process of devotion to the lineage of realization. There's devotion to the lineage of realization because of this kind of wakefulness in the Buddha Dharma is not purely theoretical or historical. It's not just something that happened 2,000 years ago or 1,000 years ago when Guru Rinpoche was alive, or when Tilopa and Naropa taught, or when Milarepa practiced. It is available now in the present, in the being and experience of the present lineage holders, but it is a problem for us. We live in a dualistic perception. We live in our the emotional fog of our projections. We exist in all kinds of conceptual beliefs. And how is it we can open our mind toward the reality of this ungraspable, brilliant, awakened mind that we heard about? Sounds good, but how do we have any access to it? The access is through the lineage transmission, through the connection with the masters, through the oral transmission, through the textual transmission, through the meditation practices of Vajrayana, and through letting go into our own nature. So again, this is a non-theistic tradition. It's all based on this fundamental egoless ground, which also contains brilliance of wisdom. So, without raving too much, The reason for devotion to the lineage masters isn't because they are not interested in flattery. They don't need offerings. They don't need adulation. They're just interested in developing the students. And because it is difficult for us to have faith in the profundity of our known nature, we externalize that profundity by uh, opening to the lineage gurus and the lineage mind. So that happens initially in the preliminary practices, the foundational practices of the so-called nundro. Nundro means that which goes before, or that which is foundational. So there's a sense of opening ourselves in devotion. So now you might think, especially if you are of a scholarly mind or an intellectual mind or a cynical mind, well, okay, devotion is for the simple-minded people. It's for the simple-minded people who don't know the, the profound Buddhist philosophy. Or it's for the peasants who can't learn to read. But that's not the case at all. Devotion is a powerful means of opening our mind and our heart at a fundamental level. The purpose of devotion is for the students to develop openness so that when profound things are said or transmitted, you become available to them. So devotion is not just for the unlettered people. Devotion is also the purview of the practitioners of the highest capability, because the practitioners of the highest capability, I'm not one of them. I'm a gradualist, what's called a gradual path person, but practitioners of the highest ability discover or realize within then the presence of a lineage master that the very presence of the lineage master displays or exposes the primordial nature of their own mind. That's why devotion is fundamental at all levels of the path, and particularly in the Vajrayana training. So the Vajrayana training begins with what we call the Nundra practice. And you probably know about it. There is, oh, by the way, there are a lot of readings that have been posted on the website. And particularly, there are a series of source books put together by Derek Colini of the Westchester Meditation Center. 3 volumes of things, which have a lot of excerpts from teachings, especially by the Vajrayana Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. So I recommend those things to you very highly, very strongly for your personal study. And also, I think Tashi has posted other kinds of readings and studies, some books by Dzongtsar Khyentse. And there's also an extremely good book on the Nundro by Mingyur Rinpoche called Turning Confusion into Clarity. So the foundation practices begin with 100,000 prostrations. Or in our Vajradhara Shambhala Sangha, we gave people an abbreviated Nundro to do because we wanted them to be able to complete the Nundro before those of us, first generation of students, Vidyadhara, die off. But in any case, if you wish to enter the Nundro, the thing to do is to talk to your own teachers in your own Dharma centers, in your own lineages, and inquire of them, how might I start this? How might I get into this foundational practice of the Vajrayana? You should ask your own teachers in your own temples or your own sanghas. And also, there is a Nundrogar that Dzongtsar Khyentse's students have organized. And also, there is something called the Trianas Training Program, a month-long program that's hosted by old students, senior students of the Vidyadhara Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. So I think Tashi will post information on that. That's a month-long program. You have already done a great deal of practice and study through this program, so that would ripen you for doing that. In the 3rd week of that program, you would be offered the possibility of Vajrayana transmission and Dendo Nundro. But coming back to the practice of prostrations, prostrations is actually making a physical full prostration on the floor as you are visualizing the lineage gurus in front. You have a visualization. It depends on your devotion and the teachers you resonate with or the lineage you're connected with. So the central figure might be Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava, or it might be in the new translation traditions, Vajradhara. And then you are also going to visualize in the tree in front of you other teachers that have been meaningful to you. If you read about the life of Naropa, if you read the 100,000 Songs of Milarepa, if you read about the life of the Karmapas, if you read about Guru Rinpoche's life, if you read about Yeshe Tsogyal and her consortship relationship with Guru Rinpoche and how she herself became a enlightened lineage holder and mother of Tibetan Buddhism. If you have devotion or interest in Longchenpa or Jigme Lingpa or Mikyu Dorje, but especially whatever contemporary teachers you have met. So usually there is some kind of principal teacher, which we call kind of your root teacher. So this lineage tree visualization that you have in front of you, it's partly made living because you've read the spiritual biographies of these teachers and you realize they were actually human beings. They had a lot of difficulties and struggles, but they were also inspired and stubborn and unyielding in their commitment, and therefore they achieved profound realization and they were able to hand it on. So partly there's history and memory and profound respect for that, but also in particular, this becomes living because of your connections with contemporary living masters, whoever they may be. So whoever that master may be, maybe they are not great beings like the Karmapa, but nevertheless, somehow they embody the continuity of the spiritual transmission of the lineage that you're connected with. That's what makes this living. So that's what's in front. But again, we're not worshiping them deities as deities, but there's profound respect that they embody. It's not because they are rock stars. It's because they contain and manifest and transmit the Dharma, which is a living transmission. So we don't prostrate to Padmasambhava or Naropa because they're dead. We prostrate to them because their realization mind is livingly present and available, and that's transmitted down to us through currently living teachers as a living continuity of the chain of transmission. So in doing a prostration, you physically lay your body on the floor and your arms outstretched. So there's a kind of physical, yogic, energetic opening, and there's a emotional opening up your emotional process. There's a kind of letting go of kind of levels of residual arrogance and self-preservation, and there's a sense of bodhicitta to sentient beings who are around you, and there is a kind of mentally um, attempting, striving, and failing to do this visualization of the lineage in front of you. So there's a physical opening, a psychophysical subtle body opening, emotional opening, mental opening, and mental availability to the unconditioned mind, which is symbolized for us by the lineage in front. So again, why is this? Because what Jamon Kongtrul and other masters say, this fundamental mind of ours, it's too close to see, it's too good to be true, it's too powerful, it's present, but we're not able to see it, it's too close. So therefore we need the process of opening and surrendering to lineage and opening to the potency or even the outrageousness of the fundamental nature within ourselves. That's the prostrations practice. So it's important to know, again, the prostrations, especially in Trungpa Buddhist tradition, this is not about being pious or religious. This is about opening to fundamental wisdom. So if you have resentment about doing this, if you feel humiliated doing this, if you feel devoted doing this, if you feel lustful doing this, none of that matters. You just offer everything. You just offer everything. So that's the first fundamental opening practice, which you could begin. And that's followed by a more subtle purification practice called the Vajrayana mantra. And that's followed by a third practice, which is also subtle. It's called offering the mandala of experience. So, in offering the mandala of experience, you think of all kinds of wonderful things your mind would like to dwell on, all of the wonderful, beautiful, appetizing, delicious experiences in the world. And then you offer them to the lineage. And then you also think of all of the ways you identify yourself through your achievements, and you offer that to the lineage. And you think of how you're attached to your friends and relatives, and you offer that to the lineage. And you think of all of your conflicting emotions, and you offer those to the lineage, because within those conflicting emotions, there's the luminosity of the underlying wisdom. And of course, there's our karmic dualistic junk, and so on. Um, so the mandala offering is not Puritanism. You're not getting rid of the beautiful things in the world, but this is a practice of acknowledging the sacredness of the world and the brilliance of perception without um, reinforcing ego. So usually the perceptions reinforce us. Usually our achievements reinforce us. Usually our attachments, all of us reinforce a sense of our solidity and the continuity of our being. So we're just acknowledging all of those things and we're offering them to the lineage. We're not getting rid of our family, we're not getting rid of our friends, but we're trying to loosen up and make more transparent our attachment to all those things. So, roughly speaking, that's what the mandala offering is about. You appreciate all of the richness of your world, and you offer to the lineage, which the lineage represents unconditioned space of mind. The lineage represents the brilliance and luminosity of the five wisdoms and the luminosity of perception. And the lineage represents a compassionate embrace of all of our experience. Then the fourth one is called the Guru Yoga. It's opening one's mind to Guru and lineage. And this one is each of these foundational practices operates first on a more fundamental physical level, then more subtly with Vajrayana mantra on the speech level and on the mandala offering mind level. Oh, okay. Another thing about mandala offering is to understand that we're not using the Vajrayana practice to fortify or solidify our ego trip. So the mandala offering is about giving away our tendency to solidify this here me. This here me. I have my heroic Vajrayana practice. Therefore, I'm really important and powerful and spiritual. So you're just going to give that away. We give up. We're giving up our notion of possessing the Dharma as a personal reinforcement. We're not trying to possess the Dharma. We're trying to kind of dissolve into the Dharma, become the Dharma. So that's an aspect of giving away in the mandala offering. And in the Guru Yoga, there's a sense of having surrendered that far. Oh, now then, please grant me direct contact with your lineage wisdom. Grant me direct contact with your lineage wisdom. I'm no longer going to hold back on my ego reservations. And I have developed through this thing, profound trust in the lineage wisdom. Therefore, the aspiration is to open our whole being completely toward the lineage wisdom and the lineage process. So that creates, that might be a very emotional process, or you might run into all kinds of hesitations. But that emotional process itself becomes part of the way of receiving the blessing and adhisthana of lineage. But the key point of the Guru Yoga is all of these practices, it makes us available. This is how we become available to the lineage transmission. So how do we get over the frigidity of ego? How do we get over the frigidity of growth and projection? If we're going to receive empowerment in the wisdom deity mandala, we need to get over that initial blockage, frigidity, uh, conceptual solidification, holding back. So the Guru Yoga, all these lineage practices, they provide the means of opening. So then we might receive the empowerment into some wisdom deity practice. There are all kinds of very skillful and profound wisdom deity practices in the Vajrayana. You could have a beautiful, peaceful practice like White Tara or Avalokiteshvara. You could have a very provocative and passionate form like Vajrayogini, who represents the transcendental passion of the Sambhogakaya and will provoke your emotionality and help you understand how to transmute your emotionality and will teach you the five Buddha wisdoms. You might have a wrathful wisdom embodiment like Vajrakalaya or something, which is based on cutting through all of the kind of dualistic fixations, all kinds of dualistic fixations, which, and all kinds of subjectivity, which block compassion. You're trying to break through, cut through those kinds of things. That's what the wrathful wisdom deities are about. So there are all of these forms. And again, all of these deity forms, they're based on the fundamental ground of non-ego. These are all manifestations of the intrinsic Buddha nature within ourselves. But at the same time, you have to practice them with a sense of the power of the lineage coming to you because you didn't realize it's difficult to understand that all that wisdom is within this mind, this body, because the idea of this mind and this body we have is very small. So therefore, there's a practice of embodying the Buddha nature in these forms. And then that embodiment is also dissolved into a formless meditation. So then the next thing you might say is, well, what's the deity with, what's the business with all these deities and all these rituals and all these practices? And I really like my shamatha vipassana practice because it's simple. There's not a lot of long liturgy. We don't have mantras to do. You don't have funny looking deities to embody. Who are they anyway? And why are they so passionate? Or why are they so wrathful? Or why are they so peaceful? Or what is it with all this ritual? Can't we just meditate on the nature of mind? And I heard about these profound traditions of Mahamudra and these profound traditions of the Dzogchen Great Perfection. Why don't we just do that? So that's a very good instinct, of course, and that's fundamentally accurate. But at the same time, there might be a naive idea that the Mahamudra is just space and peace, and that the ground Dzogchen is just space and peace, but it's actually living dynamic space and peace. It's living dynamic, powerful, liberating space and peace. And the wisdom deity practices are what tune us into that. So you can understand that the wisdom deity practices and the direct awareness, open space practices are not really different. In mature practice, they're understood as inseparable. So the wisdom deities teach us that space is dynamic, and the space teaches us that the wisdom deity practices are transparent and without ego. So I talked about devotion, lineage, continuity of lineage, the a lot about the preliminary practices of the Nundro, wisdom deity practice, and a little touch of Mahamudra Dzogchen. So that's probably enough if you want to ask questions. So if you want to ask questions about my raving, please feel free.
Thank you so much, Dorje Lopon. If anybody has any question, you can raise your hands or you can write your questions on the chat. Sorry, I'm gonna open the chat. You can write on the chat.
Okay, hold on.
Maybe I can start with the question that I personally hear a lot is, am I allowed to ask? Thank you. Can you please say uh, your thoughts or uh, of course you already mentioned, but if you can say something about how do we like choose our practice or how do we know that the practice is being particularly connected to us? I mean, the daily practice.
Are you talking about connection with teachers, or are you talking about which deity
Can,
practice you might connect with?
which deity?
Okay, so usually this is going to be based on the lineage tradition and the lineage teachers that you connect with and practice with. So um, if you're going to study with Dzongsa Khyentse Rinpoche or Ponlop Rinpoche or Mingyur Rinpoche or study with an our Shambhala Vajrayana tradition, um, the the teachers will have a particular way of guiding students. And so I think Dzongsa Khyentse over the years, I don't really know, um, but I think he has at different times given students different practices. And sometimes, I think very often, uh, teachers will give individual students particular practices that they feel are particularly appropriate for that student. Um, so often that's done in the tradition. And also, in many traditions, you're told, I think Dzogchen Khyentse does this too, you're not supposed to tell other people about what you're practicing. You keep your practice secret. Trungpa Rinpoche's way of training was different. I think Mingyur Rinpoche and Ponlop Rinpoche also follow this style. They have a kind of system of training. So in the Vajradhara's way of training, he did foundational Hinayana and Mahayana training, then the Nundro, Kagyu Nundro, and then it presents the Kagyu Yidam of Vajrayogini. There are many Yidams in the Kagyu tradition, but Vajrayogini is a practice that goes back to Tilopa and Naropa, and it's in a way for serious practitioners wanting to get into Tantra. It's very available, very workable. Um, and so he followed a particular sequence that's handed down, for 50 generations in the Kagyu Mahamudra tradition of how to train students. The Vajrayogini then has some chakra samvara, and that provides a foundation for the Mahamudra practice and things like the inner yogas if people wanted to get into those later on. And in the Nyingma tradition, your teacher might be teaching you Longchen Ningtig Nundro, and then they would give you a particular sadhanas from that tradition. So basically, you need to connect with the teacher with you have a good resonance, and find, if possible, a sangha with which you have good resonance, and then follow the instruction and guidance that you get there. So usually there will be a system of practice. Uh, and I think in a lot of the sanghas, like in our Vajradhara Sangha, not only Yeah, Vidyadhara would have us talk together about our practice because you're sharing your experience. So he taught us Vajrayana in the late 70s, and we were encouraged to share experience with other people. You didn't talk about Vajrayana to people just doing Nundro, but among yourselves you would share experience. So
Mm.
it depends on
And
your lineage connections, what they tell you to do.
sorry, just a small follow-up because I really want to give everyone chance to ask you a question. But as myself, many of us are very drawn to Advanced Cancer or already are his students, and like I just heard him saying actually that don't ask me which practice you should do because it's the same thing that why should I tell you
Okay.
that if you're coming to the buffet, you don't ask me what to eat. You just choose anything. And I was wondering if you've heard of this experience, like choosing anything, because I don't want to discourage people. They will go to Dunsikan Speech, ask him, and he would just say, you choose whatever.
Oh, that's an interesting instruction. Okay. Well, then talk to senior practitioners in your tradition and say, how about this? How about that? How about that? What do you think? And then here I have to go with, with what resonates to you because that's Sangsa Kensei's instruction to you. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Uh, okay, Veronica, yeah.
Veronica,
You're
you're
muted.
muted.
Okay, sorry. Um, so I have been practicing on and off Nondro,
Eh,
personal
uh-huh.
Nondro from Chagdud Rinpoche's tradition.
Talk to Rinpoche. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I, I feel, I mean, it's been very hard for me to commit to the practice and daily do all the, prostrations and Vajrasattva and mandala offering, well, all the steps. And I sometimes I feel that I am not prepared for the practice because that's why I cannot continue doing it daily. So, do you have any advice, anything that you consider I
Huh?
can try or?
Are you you're doing with Chaktu Rinpoche's
Mhm.
uh, sangha, right? Are you there in Brazil, or you have a sangha
No,
with you?
I'm located in Uruguay.
Uruguay. Oh, I
It's
see. Well, hmm, hmm, um, what is it makes you feel you're not ready for it? Just do you have resistance to do it, or what?
yeah, it seems that so I start the prostrations, and maybe the prostrations is the easiest part. But when I start reciting the mantras and counting and all the thing, it's like sometimes my mind starts thinking, why I'm doing all this if you don't see any
Okay,
improvement. So this sort of thing.
okay.
So then it's
So,
like I'm backfiring myself. It's like I am my own enemy during
okay,
the
okay.
practice.
Well, that's good. So, often frustrations is the harder for people because it often brings emotional upheavals or something. But that's okay. That's your Buddha nature and your karma interacting. And well, definitely the Nuntra presents challenges, and also the idea of having to count is kind of irritating or infuriating. So, and I remember when I first did Vajrasattva mantra, I found I was visualizing this Vajrasattva on top of my head, and it was difficult because I felt my mind would freeze. Felt my mind would freeze rather than open up. So I know some people when they did Vajrasattva, it was their most favorite practice, but for me, initially it was quite difficult, and I think I didn't. Uh, the prostrations has a bit of heat of your devotion. The Vajrasattva practice, in a way, it's kind of white and it may be cool. So maybe you don't see the devotional connection. So you have to, for one thing, think that Vajrasattva, whatever teachers you're hot for, better rises your devotion in the prostrations. You have to load all of those into the image of Vajrasattva. So the Vajrasattva is process of devotion as well as just this cooling thing. So if you have trouble or your mind freezes, don't worry. Just uh, don't think you're not ready. It's just the process of the journey, which has its bumps in the road and its problems. But, think of your teachers, think of the texts that you have read. Uh, um, don't get obsessed with counting. Don't get frustrated that you didn't get to 25,000 or 30,000 or whatever. Uh, don't worry if your mind freezes. Sometimes just let go and do formless meditation. And otherwise, good luck.
Thank you.
It's part of the process. It's a manual process.
We have a question
Thank you
also.
for your question. Yeah. Another one.
We have a
Uh,
question in the chat about
okay.
the Vajrasattva practice. If you could say a little bit more about this practice, the Vajrasattva in the Nyondro.
Oh, there's a question in the chat.
Yeah, there's
Oh,
there
there
are
are a
many,
lot of
but
questions in the
this is
chat.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
Can I say more about Vajrasattva and the Nundro?
yeah.
Yeah. Well, so, okay, so briefly, sometimes in the practice you have a whole lot of lineage teachers. Tilopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Karmapa third, Karmapa eighth, Karmapa ninth, or you have Guru Rinpoche, Yeshe Tsogyal, Vimala Mitra, Longshenda, Sometimes you have a whole bunch of lineage teachers, Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, Dzongsar Khyentse. And other times you have everything collapsed all into one. So Vajrasattva is a thing where you have all of the lineage presence is embodied in this one symbol. And for me, I thought that creates a little bit of an obstacle because you need to connect Vajrasattva with the sense of devotion and lineage connection. And another challenge with Vajrasattva a little bit is that when you're doing prostrations practice, you have the lineage tree, there are folks are all in front of you. So there's this sort of clear dualistic relationship. There's this dualistic relationship of lineage is an object of devotion over there, and I'm a practitioner over here. Uh, so even though that duality is confused because it's your own nature, but still, the duality is workable for your longing. So Vajrasattva is more confusing because there's this thing on top of your head, and you're not sure whether it's you or whether it's the lineage, which is separate from you. So this is because the lineage wisdom is actually coming closer to you in terms of your intrinsic purity. So you have to have devotion for Vajrasattva, but at the same time, Vajrasattva is not exactly completely separate from you. It's the beginning of a non-dual relationship, so that might be confusing. But then the idea is Vajrasattva is the embodiment of what's called intrinsic purity or inherent purity. So there's two kinds of obscurations we have. There's a sort of general karmic blockages of, you slugged somebody, you stole money, you lied to your partner, you had confused sexual relationships, who doesn't, you messed around in life and you had all these experiences. So that creates karmic imprints. And then the other thing is there's a more subtle imprint that we didn't recognize our original nature. We didn't recognize our original nature, which leads to fundamental ignorance, which leads to blah, blah. So Vajrasattva is dealing with both the external, outer, uh, more superficial karma and also deeper karma. So um, in the tradition, often they talk about the four powers of confession. You can look that up in I think either Dongtar Kensei's book on the Longchen Ningdik Junro or Jamgon Kongtrul's Portrait True Meaning or Petro Rinpoche would talk about the four powers of confession. Vidyadhara didn't present it that way. He just said, "Oh, think that there's black and white. There's a blackness. There's a sort of darkness which is being weighted down by all of the sense of one's karmic, the karmic identifications and karmic cocoons. They kind of weight you down. And then with Vajrasattva, there's a glimpse of something else. There's a glimpse of original purity as a contrast to that. So with Vajrasattva, you might find yourself alternately between a sense of heaviness and a sense of lightness. So Vidyadhara's transmission was you do the practice, maybe you struggle with it, whatever experiences, whatever thoughts, so forth, whatever regrets, you just let those happen, and you think that this wisdom amrita of the originally pure nature is coming down. So this purification, why is this purification possible? It's possible because our nature, our Buddha nature, has this originally pure nature, original purity, and Vajrasattva is kind of reminding us of that and reawakening that. So Vidyadhara said that even at the end of the Vajrasattva practice, however you felt during it, at the end, you should feel that your body is transparent and clear, and that you feel clear, pure, and uplifted. So those are some remarks.
Thank you, Dorje Lopon. And we have a question from the Chinese Sangha about what's the difference between Dzogchen and Mahamudra?
Okay. That's a good question, and there are kind of different answers to that. In general, in a lot of masters would say that they are very, very close. For instance, Tulku Ujin Rinpoche says, let's see, how should we do it? Tulku Ujin Rinpoche says the essence Mahamudra, what's called essence Mahamudra, and the Dzogchen, at least the Dzogchen cutting through treksha practice, are basically identical. In general, the Mahamudra is very profound. It's the practice of enlightenment, actually, although there are a lot of skillful ways of presenting it as just through vipassana on the nature of your mind. Generally, with both Mahamudra and Dzogchen, it's important to have a connection with the Guru Yoga practice and probably the Yidam deity practices as a foundation. They'll ripen you for that, to be able to let your mind go in that way. The Mahamudra system is a little more gradual in that it gives you kind of systematic ways of looking at the mind, systematic ways of developing vipassana. So this is a longer discussion. But the Mahamudra tradition is a little more gradual, and in the Vidyadhara's approach, let's see, he would say the Mahamudra is using the energy of the Sambhogakaya. In the Mahamudra tradition, there's a lot of emphasis, in all the Tantra traditions, there's a tremendous emphasis, let's say, on the 5 Buddha principles, Vajraratna Padma Karma Buddha, and on the luminosity within the unconditioned space and within luminosity of perception. And in the Mahamudra tradition, Vidyadhara said, well, by means of working with your emotionality and your perceptions, and the luminosity of perceptions, you have an entrance into the Sambhogakaya level of energy. And then based on that, gradually you've opened towards the Dharmakaya level of insight, which is the Mahamudra and Dzogchen territory. So Mahamudra gives you a kind of staircase or pathway, which is a little more gradual. And the Dzogchen, so the Vidyadhara characterized Mahamudra as a journey upward from the Sambhogakaya to the Dharmakaya. And he characterized Dzogchen as a journey downward In a Dzogchen, you're presented with, okay, you're Guru Rinpoche. Suddenly, there's the originally pure Rigpa, which arose immediately. So in Dzogchen, you're presented with, oh, you're already Buddha, and how are you going to express it? So Dzogchen is kind of very abrupt, and um, Dzogchen would say, we're superior because we have to cut through the idea of the dualistic mind and just rest in Rigpa directly. So Dzogchen is really partly for southern path people or people who are well prepared. And the Vajrayana's idea, his tradition and his advice was, well, you can practice Dzogchen right away, but basically, experientially, you're going to go through a Mahamudra type of stage uh, as part of the evolution anyway. And both the Mahamudra practices and the Dzogchen practices, they're both going to be strongly supported by the sadhanas, uh, which are going to tune you into pure perception. They're going to teach you transmutation of the emotional energies. And in both cases, you're going to do the slightly relative practices of the sadhana, but which have progressively more profound viewpoint behind them. And then the Mahamudra Dzogchen will arise as when you let go into the unconditioned mind, within the space of devotion and the wisdom radiance that the deities presented, then you begin to understand them as living space. So they're very close.
Thank you so much. I think we have time for one more question. We have many questions on the chat, but unfortunately our time is limited today. So we have a question. What's the advice for beginners to get familiarized with different kinds of deities, mantras, and rituals? It seems like it takes a lot of time to read and practice when we can only commit a limited time each day. That seems tough for beginners.
So do you run that by me again about what different
So what's
too
the
many deities
advice?
and rituals?
What's the advice for beginners to get familiarized with different kinds of deities, mantras, and rituals? Like it seems like it takes a lot of time. How can
Well, okay, you should again you should relate with your local sangha and relate with your local teacher. And um, mm, there are a lot of deities and practices that you can do without specific empowerment. But Trungpa Rinpoche's way of teaching was um, he kept things simple. He kind of gave us one thing at a time: shamatha vipassana practice, then the Mahayana practices, then the Nundra practices, and along the line during the Nundra practices, he mostly only gave a short Manjushri sadhana for study and teaching, and then he gave white Tara initially for fertility and things like that. But otherwise, the main thing then was everybody did the Vajrayana sadhana. So you would concentrate on one thing at a time. So I think the basic thing is relate with your teacher and Sangha and find out what they regard as the most central core practices and concentrate on the central core practices. Concentrate on shamatha vipassana, your Mahayana training and the central core practices, and then let the other practices come along. So at a certain point, like if you practice, say, Vajrayogini, if you practice any of the more advanced Anuttara Yoga deities, you'll find, oh, there's a mandala of all five Buddha principles within Vajrayogini or Chakrasavara. These are like the semi-wrathful deities. They're like kind of all-purpose things. They can manifest anything. They can be peaceful, they can be passionate, they can be enriching, they can be wrathful. So the more advanced practices will tune you into basically would carry. If you want to do White Tara, that's fine. It's a peaceful emanation. If you need to relate to Vaitali or Mahakala, that's okay because you learn transmutation. So the thing is, tune into the most core practices of your tradition, and the more advanced practices will automatically carry the energy of any of the other auxiliary things. I think that's my view. I think that's a good view.
Um, so thank you, Lodro. I'm going to give you a proper thank you at the end, but we do need to do something um, before we take our little pee break before the vows. So in a few minutes, we'll take a short break and then return for the Refuge and Bodhisattva vows with the Dorje Lopan, which we're always encouraged to retake, to reaffirm our commitment to this impeccable path of study and practice. That will be a fitting end for our course. But since this is the last class in our 7.5 month course on the Buddhist view and path, there are a few important announcements I have to make before the break. So first of all, next steps. It's clear from the Dorje Lopan's presentation today that Vajrayana is literally, as Dongsa Khenchen Rinpoche always says, a whole universe. So if you relate to or are interested in what the Dorje Lopan presented today, we posted on our course website and also in the course resource folder a lot of first-rate readings on the Vajrayana view and path from Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, Dzongsa Khenchen Rinpoche, and other great teachers. So please look there if you want to explore further. There's a lot of wonderful materials there. Secondly, if you want to explore the Vajrayana practices, and particularly the Nundro, which Dorje Lopan has just spoken about, so please, as he said, speak to your own teachers and instructors. If you're interested, Dzongsa Khenchen Rinpoche has not only written a wonderful book on the Nundro practices, as has Mingyur Rinpoche, but also created a wonderful framework for Nundro practices. Dzongsa Khenchen Rinpoche's framework is called the Nundro Gar, and we've posted the details and registration link on the course website and in the course resource folder. So if you want to explore the Nundro practices and become familiar with the Vajrayana view, please sign up for that. Thirdly, there's a lot here. If you really want to keep going deeper and further with all of this, please consider the annual 3 Yanas retreat, which is a wonderful month-long program for people who want to enter the Vajrayana in Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche's tradition. The retreat is led by senior students of Trungpa Rinpoche and alternates practice and study of the 3 Yanas, and also provides the opportunity to request Vajrayana transmission and to try out the Kagyu practices. So we posted the link to the 3 Yanas website, also on the course website and in the resource folder. Fourthly, if you've just been fired from your job or for some reason have a sudden gap in your life, we just found out that 3 spaces have just opened up in our actual Datun, the 4-week Shamatha Vipassana retreat that will happen at Deer Park starting August 23rd and going until September 21st. So it's coming right up. If you happen to have that kind of gap in your life, the registration information is posted on the Datun Study Program WhatsApp group. And for our many Chinese course participants, we're working on a follow-up program of study and practice in Chinese that will be posted in the Chinese WeChat group within the next few weeks. So we will have a follow-up work with the Chinese group that will be posted there. And lastly, I need to say some thank yous to our entirely volunteer team, which we'll do now. We won't have time after the break. First of all, I really want to thank Samten Nagajaran, who he designed the entire Shravakayana and Bodhisattvayana curricula and readings. Without Samten, this course would not have happened. Samten is an old student of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. He staffed our last two Datuns. He lives in Tamil Nadu in India. And this course was really entirely Samten's inspiration and hard work. So he's been kind of hidden through this entire 7.5 months, but this is the time to say thank you to Samten. I really want to thank our whole logistics team, Carolyn, Ina, Elroy, and Rena. And without our logistics folk, we could not have done this. We entirely relied on these wonderful people for our website, our everything, our resource folder, our newsletters, our reminders, everything else that logistically made this course possible. So thank you so much to all of you for all of your effort week after week. And I want to thank our Chinese support group that's really worked hard to make this accessible for our Chinese students. They've done tremendous work, so much effort in translating the texts week by week, providing simultaneous translation. Sophie, Helena, Malan, Jingwei, Jennifer Yo, Aino, and more. So our Chinese support group of instructors has been really wonderful. And please forgive anyone I forgot to mention in the Chinese support group. Our Portuguese translator, Luciano, our discussion group leaders, senior students and meditation instructors. Forgive any omissions. I just want to say this was an amazing team effort, totally volunteer, and I just want to thank you all. But above all, I think the thanks go to our wonderful teachers, about 20 deeply experienced and authentic practitioners and scholars who so generously and kindly gave us a slice of their profound knowledge and experience. So to all of our teachers, a profound thank you. And in the end, everything depended on you, our course participants. It was really entirely due to your devotion and commitment that made everything possible. I have to tell you the truth. At the start of this course, we wondered if we could really sustain a course like this over 7.5 months. We expected there would be such huge tradition that it might well fall apart. And amazingly, so many of you have stuck with us over the full 7.5 months. And aside from all of you who are online, we have an equal number of people who, due to time zone differences and personal commitments, also weekly do the readings and listen to the recordings of the class. So you all have had to want it as a first step. So thank you all. This would not have happened without all of you. So just a big heartfelt thank you to everyone. And we'll take a
And
5-minute.
before we taking the break, last but not least, I wanted to say thank you to the man who will never acknowledge his own effort. It's Tashi, because he is absolutely tireless effort and even a little bit annoying determination has actually made this course possible. And he kept nagging us, and he kept engaging us, and he kept reminding us how important it is, and reminding us to send reminders, newsletters, and all the messages. Thank you, Tashi. It's really an amazing achievement, and I'm in awe of the amount of effort that you done for us. Thank you very much.
Time to take a pee break now. I'm sorry for being
Okay.
so annoying over such a long period of time. So let's take just a very short break, and then please come back so we can reaffirm our commitment to the Buddhist view and path through our Refuge and Bodhisattva vows with the Dorje Lopan. So see you in 2 or 3 minutes.
Hungariana's northwest rim, upon lotus pistil stem, wondrous supreme CD found, as the lotus born renowned, many dakinis surround. In your footsteps I practice, grant your blessings come I pray. Guru Pema Siddhi Home, Om Ahum Vajra 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 Guru Pema Siddhi Home. Precious refuge, Virgin Rinpoche, longingly I call to you and pray. May all my obstacles dissolve in space, my Dharma aims be granted through your grace, my Dharma aims be granted through your grace, my Dharma aims be granted through your grace.
Okay, so I think due to constraints of time, we'll just move directly into the vow ceremonies. We'll be uh, finishing up in about 35, 34 minutes. So let's talk about the refuge vows briefly. You have all been studying the Dharma of the Sravakayana and the foundational vehicle and the Mahayana very extensively. So I don't think there's a need for me to say very much, but I'll comment about the refuge vows a little bit in the style that the Vidyadhara's transmission. There is discussion, of course, in the Profound Treasury volume of which are a collection of the 13 different 3-month seminaries in which the Vidyadhara gave talks. And Judy Leaf, who has been teaching you the last couple of sessions, undertook the very daunting task of weaving 13 different seminary presentations with kind of different thematic uh, um, melodies into these 3 volumes. But there are also some very, very good expositions. For instance, there's a book called Heart of the Buddha. This might actually be in one of Derek Collini's earlier source books. But Heart of the Buddha has wonderful, amazing talks on the significance of the refuge vow and on the bodhisattva vow. And generally, there are a lot of detailed teachings about 4 immeasurables and these kinds of things which are important. But the Vidyadhara's kind of overviews present a kind of especially skillful evocation of the heart of the matter. His teachings provide sense of the heart of the matter. So, first of all, we're going to talk about the meaning of taking refuge. Generally, I suppose the idea of refuge, the word refuge, connotes an idea of finding some harbor, some place of security, some place of trustworthiness, possibly some place of protection in life, or some orientation to our life's basic meaning. And we've all gone through a life journey, and at various times we have focused the meaning of our life or our what we have invested in. We have invested in trying to find the perfect or at least workable love relationship, partnership, or we've invested in our educational process, training ourselves, or we've invested in finding a good or perfect or meaningful career, or we've invested in family life, or we've invested in making money, or all of these things have been kind of um, mm, beckoning us to make these things our fundamental priority in life. And at the same time, due to our life experience, we do find, oh, these things do change. They are not always steady. You might be laid off tomorrow, which is a source of anxiety. Your partner may pass away, or your mother or father. You have to take care of them in the old age home, and then they depart. The political situation changes, so there's a continual shifting ground. So around that continual shifting ground, or you'd have belief situations, or you went through being raised in a religious family, and then when a period of atheism, and then you went through a period of some other spirituality, and then you did yoga, and then you became vegetarian, and all of these things temporarily provide a refuge for 2 or 3 weeks, and then you dissolve, you see their impermanence. So part of the Vidyadhara's exposition of refuge is realizing that all of these um, conditioned situations that we invest in and take refuge in, actually, they are temporary and in some sense without fundamental ground. So that kind of sense of anxiety or dissatisfaction or question leads us to a path like this. So finally, you found a path that actually tells it like it is, so to speak. Finally, you're hearing the truth that, okay, we didn't recognize the basic nature, therefore there's fundamental anxiety, therefore I need my passion or my ambition or to know that I am loved. Therefore, there are all of these conditions that I have to find in order to find happiness. And finally, somebody tells you, well, the nature of things is you have underlying confusion, therefore there's suffering, therefore you need to work with your mind, you need to take responsibility for yourself, blah, 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 blah. So that's why you're all here still after 7.5 months. That's why you're asking to take refuge, because we realize there's a continual change, there's growth, there's impermanence, hopes and dreams come and go. So what's a fundamental reference point? So fundamental reference point is the Dharma, which says that's how it is. That's how it is. And how are we going to deal with it? Well, there's a wisdom instruction. from the lineage. So taking refuge means realizing that a lot of the temporary investments we make in our life, they're still worthwhile. You still need a job. You still need your relationships. You still need your family responsibilities. But now everything is kind of redefined in terms of how can they become part of the path? How can they become part of the Dharmic path? So most of us are not monks and nuns. Most of us are so-called lay people. Although when we get into this level of Dharma practice, uh, we become like professional Buddhist lay people. Or when we get into the Vajrayana practice, you might still call yourself a lay person, but you might have significant training as if you were a monastic practitioner. So particularly in the modern world, the householder yogin, householder yogini model might be appropriate. So here in taking refuge, we're not becoming monks or nuns, but we're taking the attitude of the reference point Dharma, Dharma, the path of Dharma, a path of Buddha Dharma as some kind of reference point. Again, it's not about abandoning our relationships, not about abandoning our skill sets, but how to use them and embrace them as as a working basis for understanding the Dharmic path. So taking refuge is the notion of realizing, this is a path I actually am beginning to understand. This is something I actually have trust and confidence in. I have maybe fellow Sangha members, fellow travelers, hopefully, I have some teachers, or at least books, or at least websites, or at least Zooms that I can have confidence in. Therefore, I would like to commit myself to this as a fundamental reference point around which the rest of my life also can be included in the path. So, in the foundational refuge, we take refuge in the Buddha Shakyamuni as an example. We take refuge in the Dharma as a path. We take refuge in the Sangha as a companionship that we share together. So, just to say a little bit more about that, we take refuge in the Shakyamuni Buddha actually as a human being like ourselves. This goes along with the non-theistic emphasis in the Buddha Dharma. Yeah, even Vidyadhara, he might be a teacher of Mahamudra and Hatha Yoga, but still, I was struck. He talks about taking refuge in the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, as a human being, because he had human life like ourselves. He grew up in a privileged situation. All the pleasures and the power and his influence was here, but then he experienced death, suffering, and kind of existential question arose for him. What is this all about? So he went on his spiritual journey and he tried different spiritual traditions of his time. He tried different meditation techniques. He studied with teachers. He developed, deep meditative absorptions, expanded limitless consciousness, different kind of meditative states. And he said, well, this is interesting, but somehow this is not quite a breakthrough. This is not quite a breakthrough. And at a certain point, he experienced his breakthrough and the vision of how to overcome ignorance, how to discover the underlying, unconditioned, luminous, original nature, how to see the rise and fall of karma, how to see that everything happens by interdependence. The whole world and all of experiences is arising in a web of um, interdependence of interdependence of interdependence of interdependence. And then wondering whether to teach, and Brahma encourages him to teach. Anyhow, so the first thing is taking refuge in the Buddha, in his humanity, and his questioning, in his spiritual search, and that being a human being, making this search, discovering within his own experience the means of liberation. So we also, as human beings, can take that journey, and we follow in his tradition, which unfolded over 2,500 years with increasing expansion of view and increasing deepening and sophistication of the tradition down to the present. We also take refuge in the Dharma, uh, specifically the instructions we hear, both about the viewpoint. What's the basic viewpoint of why we're doing? What's the outlook? And then in terms of the meditation practice, how do you practice? What are the meditation instructions? And in terms of basically wholesome good conduct. So we accept the Dharma as an instruction, and we also accept the Dharma of experience. The experiences that we go through practicing meditation, you discover chaos, you discover depression, you discover elation, you discover coming and going of experiences, but you discover confidence out of all of that somehow. So we take Dharma in the path as what's been taught and as what is experienced, and we accept the Sangha as companionship. So narrowly speaking, I suppose the Sangha refers to our particular practicing community or our affiliation, whatever lineage tradition we have, whatever fellow travelers we have. In a narrowest sense, that's our Sangha. In maybe a larger sense, all of the Buddhist Sanghas of the foundational training, the profundity of the Theravadan practice, the Mahayana Zen practitioners, the Pure Land practitioners, and especially the Vajrayana Buddhist practitioners. In a larger sense, all of those are part of our larger Sangha. And maybe in a still larger sense, the Sangha maybe consists of everybody in the planet who has the good intention and is trying to help do constructive things from a point of view which is not self-centered. Maybe that's the larger Sangha in some sense, not just a bunch of Buddhist tribes, but especially in terms of the Sangha, which is shaped by a practicing community where people practice meditation together under the guidance of a tradition. The Sangha provides a lot of mirror and a lot of feedback. If you're really going off the deep end, your Sangha members will say, hey, you know, maybe you're getting a little extreme here. Or if you're depressed, maybe your Sangha members could cheer you up. But the idea of Sangha is everybody is on an independent journey. We're not depending on others, but we're supporting each other. That's the idea of the Sangha that we take refuge in. There are deeper ideas of refuge taught in the Mahayana of the Buddha as the actual enlightenment and the Sangha as the noble bodhisattvas and so forth. And in the Vajrayana, there's taking refuge in what's the gurus of the lineage as a source of transmission, the wisdom deities as a source of attainment and transformation, and the dakinis and protectors. And there's also profound refuge in the mind nature itself of unobstructed openness, radiant luminosity, and unobstructed compassion. But here in the foundational vehicle, we take refuge in the Buddha, Shakyamuni as an example, a human being like us. In the Dharma teachings we've been studying for 7 months, and in the Sangha, who are all of the fellow practitioners on this Zoom or in our local Sangha. So in order to take refuge, traditionally, you start with 3 prostrations, 3 half prostrations. I'll try to demonstrate. I don't know how I can do that on Zoom. But if you know how to do a half prostration, do that now. And thinking you're making a prostration to the lineage gurus, you're making a prostration to Shakyamuni Buddha, maybe to the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, and you're making a prostration to any teachers, profound masters of the lineage that you have trust to. So let's all do that together. So it might be difficult if you're sitting in front of your computer, but whatever you can do, just make 3 half rotations. Then traditionally you take refuge in a kneeling posture, but that's difficult on sitting in front of your computer. So just imagine that you are kneeling. And now we need to recite the refuge formula. So let's do it first in Sanskrit, since this is how it's often done in the Siddharthas and 10 Sanghas. And I noticed Chris J did this. No, we're doing refuge. We're not at Bodhisattva vows yet. Thank you. So just repeat after me, first in Sanskrit. Buddham sharanam gacchami. Dharmam sharanam gacchami. Sangam sharanam gacchami. Gacchami, I think, means I go for refuge. Buddham sharanam gacchami. Dharmam sharanam gacchami. Sangam garajam gacchami. Buddham sharanam gacchami. Dharmam sharanam gacchami. Sangam dharanam gacchami. And then we'll do the refuge vow in English, or you can do it in Portuguese or Spanish or German or Chinese. And on the third repetition, I'm going to snap my fingers. And when I snap my fingers, you should think at that moment the lineage masters have accepted us, that our own Buddha nature has accepted us. And at that moment, the energy of the lineage, at that moment, your commitment becomes real and the energy of the lineage enters you because of your aspiration and commitment. So just repeat after me in English or in your native language. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. As a result of taking refuge, there's a traditional notion of a change of attitude, a change of mark, and a change of name. Basically, the change of attitude is a sense of kind of passionlessness in the sense of non-aggression. So there's a very sympathetic attitude to ourselves and our journey. Of course, we are not perfect people. We are not perfect practitioners. But we are human beings who are on a journey. So there's a sense of non-aggression toward oneself and maybe less sense of poverty, less sense of grasping, less sense of inspiration, less opinionatedness. Even though we might have increasing prajna, we can have deeper and deeper insight in prajna, and we can also be more accommodating and less opinionated. And the change of mark is similar. Maybe we become gentle and reasonable people, gentle, peaceful, reasonable people, even though we might also sometimes have to be tough and daring. Then there's also what's called a change of name. So traditionally, often in a refuge ceremony, you can receive a refuge name. So 67 of you have requested those names, so we'll try to email them to you in a couple of days. So that constitutes the refuge vow. So you can just think now, you have made your commitment. You have made your commitment in the presence in your mind of the lineage transmission that comes down to you as a living tradition over 2,500 years of practitioners and hundreds of thousands of practitioners like ourselves. And therefore, congratulations, everybody, for doing so. And therefore, there are auspicious verses, but I'll do them at the end of the Bodhisattva vows. So let's pause for a minute and we'll move to the Bodhisattva vows. I didn't expect to do all of these things, but Tashi requested, and because of my vow, I had to assent. So please join me in the process of the Bodhisattva vow. There is traditionally what's called the vast aspiration from a Sangha and the also profound tradition, maybe from Nagarjuna. I'm going to say just a few things about the Bodhisattva vow before we do it, but you just had extensive teaching on Mahayana from many wonderful teachers. Chris J. already presented this months ago, Chakra Kondu, Judy Lee, Alexandro, and various people teaching the view of emptiness and the view of bodhicitta. So I don't think, but just reflecting a few things that Vidyadhara's remarks in Heart of the Buddha, he comments that taking this vow is a powerful thing to do because it counteracts instinctive ego, or it counteracts our native ego instinct, ego contraction. We generally have a small, narrow world. Even if we practice the Buddha Dharma, the foundational vehicle, and we practice meditation and so forth, still maybe our main focus in life is our own spiritual journey, our own spiritual quest. But in the Mahayana vow, we're opening that quest open to extend to others. And we're opening up to a wider world, not just our immediate family, just not our immediate ethnic group, not just our immediate Dharma, Sangha, tribe, not just our immediate workplace, but to a very larger world of all sentient beings. It says, a lot of the refuge formulas say, oh, all sentient beings, limitless space, take refuge. On behalf of all sentient beings, limitless space, I take refuge. And in doing so, we're dealing with the others in two senses. On the one hand, we're dealing with our projection of others. Our relationships with others are highly influenced by our expectations about how this person is workable, this person is our friend, this person is irritating, this person is challenging. So there's making friends with one's own projections. Apart from that, then actually contacting the persons themselves. But also, as Vidyadhara said, this is not just an idealistic thing, because this is a discipline which has been handed down for generations of great masters have said, this bodhisattva vow, this bodhicitta attitude, this is a powerful way. This is, if you are interested in realization of our basic being and basic nature, and we're interested in how to get past the narrowness of our perception, and narrowness of our self-centeredness, this bodhisattva practice is the way to go. So there's what's called the aspiration, bodhicitta, which Chris J talked about, in terms of the four immeasurables and practices like that, and the Tonglen. And there's the bodhicitta of action, which is things like the six paramitas or any kind of teaching like that. In the Shambhala tradition, we would also talk about the four dignities of the Shambhala warrior thing. That's another metaphor, basically, for the same thing. So the six paramitas are an important thing, including starting with generosity, which includes material generosity, giving the Dharma, and also giving people protection from fear. But let's move directly into the vow due to time. So let's put up, please, the text of the Bodhisattva vow ceremony. So we're going to repeat, please repeat after me the stanzas here. So the liturgy here comes from the Jewel of Liberation by Gampopa, who was the principal lineage holder of Milarepa. This is from the Jewel of Liberation and also draws on the Indian tradition of the great spiritual masters in India. So please just repeat after me. We'll do phrase by phrase. So you can repeat this in your own language if you want, with your hands together. Teacher, please consider me, just as the previous Tathagata Arhat, perfect, complete Buddha Bodhigavats, and the Bodhisattvas dwelling on the great bhumis, first aroused the mind that aspires to unsurpassable, perfect, great enlightenment. So also I, your refuge or ordinary name, so also I, Lodro Dorje, request the teacher to help me arouse the mind that aspires to unsurpassable, perfect, complete, great enlightenment. Teacher, please consider me, just as the previous Tathagata Arhat, perfect, complete Buddha Bhagavats, and the Bodhisattvas dwelling on the great bhumis, first arouse the mind that aspires to unsurpassable, perfect, great enlightenment. So also I, your refuge name, request the teacher to help me to arouse the mind that aspires to unsurpassable, perfect, complete, great enlightenment. Teacher, please consider me, just as the previous Tathagata Arhat, perfect, complete Buddha Bhagavats, and the Bodhisattvas dwelling on the great bhumis, first arouse the mind that aspires to unsurpassable, perfect, great enlightenment. So also I, your refuge name, request the teacher to help me arouse the mind that inspires to unsurpassable, perfect, complete, great enlightenment. Then there are some instructions which I will paraphrase. Generally, wherever there is space, there are sentient beings. So in the Mahayana Dharma, we talk about the 10 directions in front of you, to your right, your left, behind you, and intermediate directions above and below. So we're not just in our local neighborhood, our local Sangha, or in Halifax or Beijing or Beer, but we're opening our consciousness to the wide open space, initially to all people on the earth, all the animals on the earth, all the beings in the oceans, and maybe all kinds of beings that live in states of consciousness that we cannot perceive. It says there are sentient beings. Wherever there are sentient beings, there are kleshas. So a sentient being like ourselves means someone living in a dualistic consciousness, someone who did not recognize fully the ground Buddha nature. Not recognizing the ground Buddha nature, we didn't recognize that we're all the same. We didn't recognize our interdependence. So there's a notion of me and others, and then there's desire and aversion. So by not recognizing the basic ground nature, therefore being in the dualistic consciousness, and therefore being involved in reference territory. Naturally, the self and others arises, naturally all kinds of kleshas arise because of this delusion. Wherever there are negative actions, there is suffering. All these sentient beings who have suffering have been our fathers and mothers, like our parents. They are drowning in the ocean of samsara. They are tormented by many things. They have no refuge or protector. They have all kinds of temporary protectors, temporary refuges, but they're without a fundamental reference point. Next page, please. Therefore, we should contemplate, presently, my capacities are limited, but in order to benefit sentient beings, I should proceed on the path, the Bodhisattva path, the path of wisdom and compassion, and see how can we evolve ourselves to help others. So now, with the next section, we'll take the vow itself. So think of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas that you could imagine. Think of your masters that you have connected with, or masters you have read about or admired. And thinking about your root teacher, if you have one or several teachers that are important to you. So repeat after me. All Buddhas and Bodhisattvas dwelling in the 10 directions. Please consider me. Teacher, please consider me. In this and previous lives, I, so-and-so, that whose name, have practiced, urged others to practice, and rejoiced in the practice of the roots of virtue arising from generosity, discipline, and meditation. Therefore, just as the previous Tathagata Arhat, perfect, complete Buddha Bhagavats, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas like Avalokiteshvara, dwelling on the great bhumis, first aroused the mind that aspires to unsurpassable, perfect, complete, great enlightenment. So also, from now until I reach supreme enlightenment, in order to take across sentient beings who have not crossed over, to liberate those who have not been liberated, to encourage those who need encouragement, and to establish in complete nirvana those who have not been established. I, your refuge name, Hodo Dorje, will arouse the mind that aspires to unsurpassable, perfect, complete, great enlightenment. Two more times. All Buddhas and Bodhisattvas dwelling in the 10 directions, please consider me. Teacher, please consider me. In this and previous lives, I, your refuge name, have practiced, urged others to practice, and rejoiced in the practice of the roots of virtue, arising from generosity, discipline, and meditation. Therefore, just as the previous Tathagata Arhat, perfect, complete Buddha Bhagavats, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas dwelling on the great bhumis, first aroused the mind that aspires to unsurpassable, perfect, great enlightenment. So also from now on, until I reach supreme enlightenment, in order to take across all sentient beings who have not crossed over, to liberate those who have not been liberated, to encourage those who need encouragement, and to establish in complete nirvana those who have not been established. I, your refuge name, Lodro Dorje, will arouse the mind that aspires to unsurpassable, perfect, complete, great enlightenment. One more time, thinking that the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and lineage masters are witnessing our vow with delight and encouragement. All Buddhas and Bodhisattvas dwelling in the 10 directions, please consider me. Teacher, please consider me. In this and previous lives, I, your refuge name, have practiced, urged others to practice, and rejoiced in the practice of the roots of virtue, arising from generosity, discipline, and meditation. Therefore, just as the previous Tathagata Arhat, perfect, complete Buddha Bhagavats, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas dwelling on the great bhumis, first arouse the mind that aspires to unsurpassable, perfect, complete, great enlightenment. So also, from now until I reach supreme enlightenment, in order to take across sentient beings who have not crossed over, to liberate those who have not been liberated, to encourage those who need encouragement, and to establish in complete nirvana those who have not been established. I, so and so, will arouse the mind that aspires to unsurpassable, perfect, complete, great enlightenment. Having done that, let's turn to page 6. Now again, thinking that at the bottom of the page. So we're taking the vow here. This is, can you go to the top of the page here for a minute? This is something called the Mahayana Morning Liturgy. This is something that Vajrayana Rinpoche presented to his students. So if you like, as a way of renewing day by day your Bodhisattva vow, you could do this. This talks about making a lineage supplication and refuge, simple refuge, and then the Bodhisattva vow from Shantideva, from Shantideva's Bodhicharyavatara, which talks about entering the conduct of a Bodhisattva. So if you're doing any Vajrayana sadhanas or you're doing your Nundo practice, the Nundo practice already has the Bodhicitta vow embedded in it. So let's look at the vow at the bottom of the page. And again, I'll take these stanzas slowly so that you can recite them, or it can be translated into your own languages. So this comes from the great Siddha Shantideva of the Indian tradition. His kind of hymn of praise and aspiration to the Bodhisattva way. So with palms at your heart center and pretend that you're kneeling, but you're sitting in front of your computer. As earth and the other elements, together with space, eternally provide sustenance in many ways for the countless sentient beings. So, in that same way, may I become sustenance in every way for sentient beings to the limits of space until all have attained nirvana. Next page. As the Sugatas of old gave birth to the bodhicitta and progressively established themselves in the training of a bodhisattva, so I too, for the benefit of beings, shall give birth to the bodhicitta and progressively train myself in that discipline. At this moment, my birth has become fruitful. I have realized my human life. Today, I am born in the family of the Buddhas. Now, I am a child of the Buddhas. From now on, I will forthrightly perform the actions befitting to my family. I will act so as not to degrade the faultlessness and discipline of my family. Just as with a blind person finding a jewel in a heap of dust, thus somehow bodhicitta has been born in me. This is the supreme Amrita which destroys death, the inexhaustible treasure which removes the world's poverty. It is the supreme medicine which cures the world's sickness, the tree which provides rest for beings weary of wandering on the paths of existence. It is the universal bridge on which all travelers may pass over the lower realms, the rising moon of mind which dispels the torment of the kleshas. It is the great sun which puts an end to the obscurity of ignorance, the pure butter which comes of churning the milk of the holy Dharma. For travelers wandering the paths of existence, seeking happiness from objects of enjoyment, it is supreme bliss near at hand, the great feast which satisfies sentient beings. Today, witnessed by all the protectors, I have welcomed the sentient beings and Sugatas. Devas and Asuras rejoice. And that is the Bodhisattva vow. So the Vidyadhara Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche used to talk about, in some sense, giving up your privacy a little bit. And at the end of a Bodhisattva vow, he would often say something like, okay, now you're going to work with other people. Welcome to chaos. So thank you all very much. Profound bow to all of you online who've been studying the Dharma continuously for 7.5 months, and to Samten Nagarajan, Hitashi, Carolyn, and everybody in the facilitators. Really profound bow to you for creating this very auspicious process. Thank you all very much.
Tashi, you're muted. You have to open your mic.
Thank you. Got it. So I think we all realize that today alone could have been a 7.5 month course just today. Dorje Lopan has given us a taste of the incredibly rich cream of our view and path. But in every sentence, Lodro, you've pointed to the wealth of knowledge and practice underneath every word you said today. In my experience, Lodro is a real scholar practitioner. He's truly able to join study and practice in the most genuine way. And what I always sense with you, Lodro, is that underneath your erudite scholarly expositions, there's tremendous passion, devotion, and good heart. And we've been really honored and privileged to experience that with you today. So thank you so much, Lodro. May I ask you please to complete this course by leading the dedication of merit and the 4 lines from the Bodhicharya Avatar. Cool. Okay. Lodra, will you lead us in this? Well, I think he's muted. Okay, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it
May it
defeat
defeat the enemy wrongdoing
the
from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may all
May all
beings be
beings
free.
be free. As
As long as space remains, as long as the world remains, may I too remain to alleviate the sufferings of the world. Bow to everybody. It's wonderful. It's auspicious. That's terrific. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you
you.
very much. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank
so much.
I
you.
appreciate
Bye.
it.
Thank
so
Bye.
much.
Yes,
Oh my
beautiful. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
merci beaucoup.
Just feel
so much.
Thank you.
Well, it's an enjoyable
Merci
experience.
beaucoup.
Bye. Very
Yes, muchas gracias.
Je suis